Good morning, dear students of class 12. Welcome to the English online learning class. Today we are going to take up part 3 of the lesson Indigo by Louis Fisher. We have already taken up 2 sessions on the text of the lesson Indigo. So let us first have a quick recap of the lesson and then we'll continue further. As told earlier, that this lesson is by the writer Louis Fisher and it is an excerpt from his book, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Louis Fisher visited Gandhiji's ashram in Sevagram in central India, and there he had a conversation with Gandhiji. It was the year 1942. Gandhiji, during the conversation, told him that what were the sequence of events which led him to decide that the Britishers should leave India, and it was in the year 1970. He had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow, which was attended by 2,301 delegates and many visitors. When the proceedings of the session was going on, Gandhiji remembered a peasant came up to him, and he was representative of any other peasant in India, poor, weak. He introduced himself as Rajkumar Shukla from Champaran and further said that he has come to take Gandhiji to Champaran. Now, under an ancient arrangement, the Champaran peasants, they were sharecroppers, and Rajkumar Shukla was also one of them. He was illiterate, no doubt, but he was very firm, determined. And this quality of Rajkumar Shukla impressed Gandhiji a lot. He had come to this Congress session to complain about the injustice that was done to the peasants of Champaran by the landlords, by the British landlords. And probably somebody had told him that speak to Gandhiji. Gandhiji told Shukla that he was busy with his prior appointments in Kanpur, and then he had to visit several parts of India. But Shukla accompanied him everywhere. Finally, when Gandhiji returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad, and Shukla was with him, he was almost begging, imploring Gandhiji to fix a date. And Gandhiji was very much impressed by his determination, tenacity, and he said that he would be in Calcutta on such and such date, from where Rajkumar Shukla can come and pick him up, and they will both leave for Champaran. Months passed, and on the fixed day at the appointed spot in Calcutta, we found Rajkumar Shukla waiting for him, and they both proceeded to Champaran. On way, they boarded a train from Calcutta to the city of Patna in Bihar. There, Shukla took him to the house of a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later on became the president of the Congress Party and of India. At that time, Rajendra Prasad was not in the house. His servants allowed Shukla, as they knew him earlier also, to stay outside with Gandhiji. But on condition, Gandhiji was not allowed to draw water from the well. Now, instead of proceeding straight to Champaran, Gandhiji decided to take halts, and he stopped at Muzaffarpur. The reason was that he wanted to obtain complete information about the conditions of the peasants, and he also wanted to mobilize mass support for his cause. So he sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had known at Tagore Shantiniketan school. When the train arrived at midnight, 15th April 1917, Kriplani was waiting there for him to receive him along with a large body of students. So he had mobilized the support of the students and the people of Muzaffarpur. Gandhiji stayed there in the home of Professor Mulkani, who was a teacher in a government school. And Gandhiji found this very daring, as Professor Malkani was a government servant, and for sheltering a man who was an advocate of home rule were much against the policies of the British government, the government in power, and which could even cause Professor Malkani to lose his job. But he was very daring, as he in fact invited Gandhiji to stay in his house. Now the news of Gandhiji's arrival and the mission that he had brought with him, he was going to, as a Messiah, he was a Messiah of the people of Champaran. It spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and also to Champaran. So sharecroppers from Champaran, people from Muzaffarpur, they flocked. Whatever conveyance they could get, or even on foot, they reached to Muzaffarpur to see their Masiha, to see their champion, who was going to free them from their problems, who was going to fight for their rights. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhiji and explained him the types of cases brought by the peasants in court, and also informed him about the size of their fees. Gandhiji was angry. He scolded the lawyers for collecting big fees from the sharecroppers. And then he addressed the sharecroppers, the peasants, by telling them to stop going to law courts, because in such cases courts can do little help. First, the peasants need to be free from fear. Now, he studied the land arrangement at Champaran. Most of the arable land in Champaran was divided into large estates which was owned by Englishmen. And here the Indian peasants, they worked as sharecroppers. The chief commercial crop, cash crop, was indigo. And the landlords compelled the tenants to plant 15% of their holdings with indigo and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. And this was done by a long-term contract. But then the recent development was that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. And thereupon, the British landlords tried to exploit from this situation, as Indian indigo was no longer in demand. And the synthetic indigo developed by Germany was more cheap. So the demand for Indian indigo fell. So the British landlords tried to gain out of this situation by making the Indian sharecroppers pay compensation for the relaxation of being released from the condition of growing 15% of their land with indigo. But instead, they had to pay a huge compensation. Now, this sharecropping arrangement of compelling the Indian peasants to grow 15% of their land with indigo was irksome to the peasants. They were fed up of this. And so many of them signed willingly. They agreed to pay compensation to get relaxed from this compulsion. Those who resisted, they engaged lawyers, and the landlords hired thugs to force the Indian peasants to pay compensation. Meanwhile, the information about the synthetic indigo also reached the peasants. And now they felt cheated. And those who had given their money as compensation. They wanted their money back. So there was a lot of dissatisfaction among Indian peasants who felt that they were being exploited by the British landlords. And that is why Rajkumar Shukla, as a representative of all the Indian peasants, had approached Gandhiji for help. And at this point, Gandhiji arrived in Champaran. And he began by trying to get facts. Now, first, he started mass mobilization. He tried to get complete information. And when he reached Champaran, he tried to get the facts. First, he visited the secretary of the British Landlord Association. The secretary told him that they could give no information to an outsider. They considered Gandhiji as an outsider. Gandhiji answered that he was not an outsider. He belonged to India. Next, Gandhiji called on British official commissioner of the Tirhut division in which Champaran district lay. The commissioner, Gandhiji reports, proceeded to bully me and advised me forthwith to leave Tirhut. So this was the advice that was given by the British official commissioner of Tirhut division, that Gandhiji should leave Tirhut immediately. Gandhiji did not leave. He decided to stay. Instead, he proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. So he decided to move towards Motihari, the capital of Champaran. And several lawyers accompanied him. So Gandhiji was not alone. Along with Gandhiji, there were several lawyers. At the railway station, vast multitude greeted Gandhiji. Vast, huge multitude of people, number of people. They were greeting Gandhiji because they considered Gandhiji as a Masiha, a champion who was fighting for their rights. He went to a house and, using it as headquarters, continued his investigations. So he used one of the houses as headquarters, as his office, and started his investigation. A report came in that a peasant had been maltreated in a nearby village. Gandhiji received the news that a peasant had been maltreated cruelly in a nearby village by the British landlords. Gandhiji decided to go and see. The next morning, he started on the back of an elephant. He had not proceeded far when the police superintendent messenger overtook him and ordered him to return to town in his carriage. So Gandhiji was advised to get back to the town in his carriage, in the carriage of the police superintendent's messengers. Gandhiji complied. The messenger drove Gandhiji home, where he served him with an official notice to him. So he agreed, he obeyed the orders, did not disobey the order of the police superintendent's messenger. But then, when he was served an official notice, which was to leave Champaran immediately, Gandhiji signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would disobey the order. So Gandhiji wrote on the notice, he accepted the notice, but then he wrote on the notice that he would be disobeying this order of leaving Champaran. In consequence, Gandhiji received the summon to appear in court the next day. Because he had disobeyed the summon, the official notice, he received a summon, an order from the court that he was to appear in the court the next day. We are going to stop here and continue with this in the next class. Thank you.